Hey up everybody, welcome back to the Audio Cycling YouTube channel, where today we're going to be talking about the Tour of Poland. For some reason, every single team has just been in a stalemate of not wanting to release their start lists, which is why this preview is out a little bit later. So we are confined by the limits of the teams not wanting to release teams, but that to one side. Obviously, we've got Jonas Vingegaard here, the most expensive rider at 28 credits. Honestly, the only people who we really see at this price is him and Pogacar in stage races. Is this parkour completely suited to Vingegaard? I'd say it isn't. There's a lot of punchy finishes here, which I'd say are suited to other riders in this race, perhaps a little bit more than him. But the fact that there are multiple uphill finishes and a time trial means that Jonas Vingegaard is the favourite for this race, and therefore that's why he's the most expensive. Is he worth it at 28 credits? I'm not too sure. Obviously, a lot of us picked him for San Sebastian and were burnt pretty heavily because he DNF'd that race, and that is providing some concern as to whether Vingegaard is in good form or not. I would say that Vingegaard is just a naff one-day racer, just straight up, so maybe we're all kind of a little bit overhyped with Vingegaard in that race. I'd say that in a stage race, he usually does very well. Like he will probably win this race. Let's face it. But at 28 credits, he's going to need to get somewhere around 900 points to be worth it. And if he wins, then he needs to get 600. And his advantage is that at least he can start scoring from day one and get those GC points. So I think it's very much up in the air whether Vingegaard is good or not. I just think that there's so many other great riders further down where you can make a far more interesting team by not including Vingegaard, and that's a team which I've made, but obviously you'll have to hang on to the end to see who I'm selecting. So Vingegaard, I know it's not very helpful, but I think he will probably win. I'm not sure whether he's going to be like the most efficient choice for you to be going with. Speaking of which, Bilbao and Mohoric, I'm not tempted by either of these. The fact that Bahrain say that they're both kind of leaders here. Obviously Mohoric won this race last year, but he was 12 credits last year, not 20. I just haven't seen anything from these two recently. Bilbao left the Tour because of illness. We haven't seen him since then. Or he got pulled off of the San Sebastian start list. And Mohoric similarly didn't really do anything of note during the Tour, and then he DNF'd the Olympic road race. So neither of these I can strongly suggest. I just think that that's far too risky for me, and it's always the case that the second and third most expensive riders in the stage races never seem to do that well points-wise. It just seems to be a bit of a trend. When you get to the 16 credit riders, there's kind of two sprinters in Coy and Pedersen, and then two GC riders, I'd say, in Sheffield and Ulissi. Obviously, UAE Team Emirates, it's hard to tell who their lead is going to be, but Ulissi has done very well in this race in the past, and if you look at his recent results in stage races like the Czech Tour, the Tour of Austria, or just generally any stage race that Ulissi has done this year, he is usually very, very strong. The parkour is very suited to him, and I think that Ulissi is a very good choice, and I would say he's the leader, but UAE seem to suggest that Micah's going to be their leader. I know he won a stage last year and finished 8th in GC, but for me, Ulissi's got the best shot. Sheffield's got a great time trial, so he's going to be probably top 3 in that TT on stage 2. And for me, Coy and Pedersen, I don't think are worth it at 16 credits. Generally, when you get sprinters who are 16 credits, they're just not worth it in a stage race, especially if, for the example of this Tour of Poland, there's only 3 sprints. So if they win all 3 of them, which, pretty hard to do as a sprinter, if they get 450, if they win the points classification, that gets them another 60, so they can get like 500 odd, but it's generally better to try and go a little bit cheaper, maybe with like a 14 credit, because you're going to be relying on Pedersen really competing in those uphill sprints, which I don't see him doing, considering that a bit further down there is Thibaut Nace, and I think they'd probably go with him there. So for me, these Coy and Pedersen are just a little bit like they'll score well, but I just don't think they're going to be like the optimum choice, if you see what I mean. 14 credit riders, there's lots to be getting at. Obviously, you've got Bardet in here as like a pure climber. I would say that, there's quite a few sprinters in here, but Gregoire is a better choice than Bardet, just because Gregoire seems to have a very decent TT. He's very punchy as well. You know, he won a stage of Basque Country this year from a reduced sprint, and I think that Gregoire very suited towards this race. So I think he is a very good choice to be going with. I think he could very well top 5 this race, in all honesty. And then you got the other sprinters, Bauhaus, Ewan, Merlier, and Piffy. Merlier, I would say, is just as fast as Coy, but he's 2 credits cheaper, and he's got a more designated lead out than Coy does, because obviously Visma Lease Bike has spread a bit over having a bit of GC protection duty with Jonas Vingegaard in there. So I like Merlier. He's, you know, arguably the fastest sprinter in the world, him and Philipsen, and Milan, but obviously neither of those are here. So Merlier I really like, and honestly, all the other sprinters, you could throw a blanket over them. Neither of them are particularly better than the others. Like Piffy, you could argue that he's more versatile, but like I just said, they've got Gregoire here, so why would Piffy be competing in those uphill sprints when they've got Gregoire here? So for me, the other sprinters, and even honestly going down into these 12 credit sprinters like Ackermann, Milano, Gerber Tayson, and then even a bit further down to the 10s, they're all just kind of like, depending on the situation of a sprint, one of them could get lucky and they could get some good results. And honestly, I can't tell you which sprinters those are going to be, because sprinting is a bit of a lottery, and you just have to sometimes go with who's got the strongest lead out and who's got the best kind of sprinting form recently. If that's the case, Ackermann did leave the Tour with some very good sprinting legs. He was very consistent there. At 12 credits, maybe, you know, if he was 10 credits, I'll be very tempted, but 12 is, you know, it's borderline, but Ackermann could be very good. Milano, does he even have a lead-out man in this race? I don't think UAE Team Emirates have accounted for that. And Gerber Tayson, yeah, like he's a decent sprinter as well. He's just as good as Ackermann. He's probably just as good as Ewan and Bauhaus. So you could go with him if you wanted to save a little bit. But honestly, you've got a big GC kind of pool in this 12 credit bracket. You've got the UAE just armada of Grossschartner, Micah, and Vellens, all of whom I think could do well in GC here, but obviously it won't be all of them because somebody needs to work on the front. Honestly, just because of the TT, I think that Grossschartner and Vellens have a little bit of an upper hand in UAE Team Emirates, because both of these have good time trials. Obviously Vellens, the Belgian time trial champion. Grossschartner, do you remember in Romandy where he got, or it might have been Tour de Suisse, it was one of those, he got 3rd place in that kind of rainy TT that McNulty won. He is just a very good time trialer, is Grossschartner. He's probably not going to be selected by a lot of people, but I think he could be a decent pick. Kelderman and Bargioli, I think, are just going to be domestiques. Thibaut Nace, good choice. He will do well in the uphill sprints, but he will suffer in the TT, so I'm not sure how well he'll do in GC, because I expect he could lose a minute or a minute and a half in that time trial. So maybe he might drop down the order because of that, but I think because he is such a sensational puncher, he should do good in lots of the other kind of hillier terrain. Onley's a good choice. Obviously they have Bardet here, so it's a bit unsure as to who their leader is actually going to be, so that's a little bit of a risk, 50-50 for each of those. But Onley's done well in this race before. He's a very good puncher. Obviously he won up with Hill this year, and you know, outside of the bad injuries he's had this year, Onley's been very good in stage races, so I like him for this. And I like Schachmann as well. He's time trialing very good. He was top 10 in the Olympic TT, and he just seems to be getting back into the groove of things, and I think that Schachmann is somebody very suited towards this race, so I like him as well. 10 credit riders, you've got more sprinters: Bennett, Dainese, Meus and Van Uden. Again, all of them pretty much of a muchness, quite similar. I'd say Meus probably is a little bit of an edge. He is, in my opinion, probably a little bit faster and a little bit more consistent than the other ones, but honestly, he could also just DNF or just like come 80th in all the sprints because he gets boxed out. It's far too risky. You know, a lot of these sprinters, you might get lucky or you might just get slapped in the face. Aniel Kowski will be the sprinter for Cofidis. He's done decently in sprints before. Ballerini will be sprinter for Astana. I don't think they have another sprinter here. I expect they won't be going for Battistella, but instead going for Scaroni in GC, because Scaroni did do good in this race last year, picking up multiple top 10s. Kristen, despite the fact that he is on fire at the moment, I just think that somebody on UAE Team Emirates is going to have to work on the front, and I think it might be him, just because I don't know, youth. Maybe he's just like, you're the young gun, you're going to work on the front. I don't know. But if Kristen is allowed his own freedom, he will be very good in this race. It's just I'm not sure that will be the case. Foss, quite cheap. He's finished top 10 in this race quite a couple of times, I think. Good time trialist. So that's quite a decent pickup for a bit of a cheaper GC option. But of course, he might just be working for Sheffield. Perston Hageners would be a good choice, but obviously there's a lot of people he's going to have to work for. Kielik will maybe sprint for Alpecin. There's also Jensen Plowright here, so it could be either one of those two. But given that Plowright is half the price of Kielik, I'd be more tempted to go for him. Archie Ryan, probably leading the EF Education Easy Post GC campaign in this race, I would suggest. Scaroni, like I said, I think that he's a good choice as well. And then all the other guys, I think I'll either some sort of lead out man or domestique in the 8 credit bracket. 6 credit riders. Barton maybe could do a bit of a GC job for Movistar. He obviously has a decent TT. Bassato sometimes gets involved in these kind of more grippier, kind of punchy sprints. And I think that there's definitely a couple of those. So I think that Bassato is a decent one. Garcia Piana, good time trialist, should be top 10 in that TT. And he also loves a breakaway, so maybe he might go for some KOM classification or something like that. Mikko Frolicanore has done decently in this race in the past as well, but obviously he hasn't had that form this year. But maybe this could be the race. He is 6 credits after all, so it's pretty low risk at the end of the day. Paul Magnier, obviously I think he will be on lead-out duty for Tim Merlier, but Magnier is so good. Like, he has been one of the real breakout performers of this year. Remember, like, those punchy sprints in Oman that he won? Like, this guy is seriously good, and if Merlier's out of position, or maybe Magnier's even good enough to get over some of those hills and contest some of those sprints, maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but 6 credits, it's pretty low risk. Nerurka, great pickup. He is, Dauphiné, he was doing good in those punchy sprints. I think that Nerurka is a great pick for lots of teams. Probably my favourite 6 credit rider, actually. Now we're getting towards the bottom. There are some other ones I like. Voisard is usually very consistent in GC, top 20 usually most of the time. Does a good time trial as well, so maybe he's top 15 there. But he won't be picking up maybe too many points just because he's good, but he's not good enough to be consistently in the top 10, if you see what I mean. And then actually the last 2 riders of Wandal and Zambanini, I think both of these are good. Wandal, obviously there's only Schachmann really ahead of him in terms of GC status in Bora Hansgrohe. And I would say that Wandal, given that he looked very good in the Tour of Wallonie, he was also 3rd in the Danish national champs. He looks like a great kind of climber puncher and very suited towards this terrain. And yeah, like I said, because Schachmann's the only realistic person ahead of him, I think that Wandal could definitely do decently in this race. And Zambanini, very strong recently as well. He was just outside the top 10 in Tour of Slovenia GC. He was also 3rd in the Italian national champs. And although that Bahrain Victorious say that he is going to be the climbing support for Bilbao and Mohoric, I just think that because those two just have a little bit of uncertainty about them, maybe Zambanini can get his own freedom. But again, that's kind of clutching at straws a little bit. It's probably better to go with Wandal or Nerurka as your first bets at the 6 credit bracket. And then the 4 credit riders, really, there's a couple which I like, and they are sprinters. You got Jensen Plowright. On the flatter sprint, I think they might go with him over Timo Kielik, but, if they don't, then, there's not that much lost. He's only 4 credits. And then the other one would be Sigmund Sajnok. Good sprinter back in the days of CCC, if you guys were watching around then. He hasn't had that sprinting form recently, but you never know. Maybe he could sneak a couple of top 10s. And honestly, other than that, you're looking at maybe Alessandro Vera for Arkea. Could get top 20 in GC. And other than that, you're really looking at just like assist points. Maybe Sverchek. Lots of hype around him like a couple of years ago. He was very good in under 23, but hasn't hit the mark really in the elite ranks. So maybe, I don't know. It's a little bit risky. And also Malaysia, obviously under 23 TT champ last year in 2023 in Glasgow. So probably a good one to be putting on for just that one TT. And other than that, I mean, you got Gibbons here as a lead-out man who, if something happens to Pedersen, maybe he sprints. But yeah, I reckon that's probably enough 4 credit riders for you guys to be going at. And this is my team at the moment. There was a suggestion that I kind of zoom the screen in this time. I think it is looking better. You can see it's very... it doesn't include Jonas Vingegaard, but, you know, I just really like... And it's also very non-sprinter. I just love the look of this team. It's very GC orientated. Maybe I could swap... You know, only for just like the one sprinter, I could go with Merlier and then swap off Magnier and get in, you know, Plowright or something. I quite like the look of this as a team because given that the GC fight starts immediately, stage 1 and 2, those GC riders are going to get those GC points from day 1 throughout the whole race. It's not like you got a sprint to start with and they can pick up some GC points for the first couple of stages. So that's why I'm going quite GC heavy rather than the sprinters. But I do quite like having Merlier in here as my like one designated sprinter. But let me know what you're thinking in the comment section down below. Obviously, very quick turnaround time. It does start at 12 o'clock tomorrow in European time. So if you see this, be sure to share it around Twitter and stuff, just because it's not going to have enough time to probably get its full kind of circulation around people. But yeah, let me know who you're thinking of putting in your teams in the comment section down below. And all that is left to say is to stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next video, which will probably be with Vuelta a España. Salut!